process.
Cavosa Excavating is a family-owned and operated company specializing in the installation of Title V septic systems. Cavosa Excavating is one of the largest septic system installers on Cape Cod. Whether it's upgrading your current system or installing a whole new system, Cavosa Excavating can do the job. Cavosa Excavating, 508-563-5530.
KK Codder's, known for its seafood, fried clams, handmade onion rings, along with Angus cuts meats, prime rib, ribeye, and sirloin. A varied selection of wine and over 50 types of beer. Open daily till 9 p.m. at 100 Davis Straits in Falmouth.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Thursday, June 24th special meeting of the Board of Selectmen. This meeting was called to discuss how the board will proceed, how the town will proceed with regards to looking into the matters surrounding the E. coli outbreak and boil water order issued by the DEP. Initially, as you may recall, this board had tasked the town manager with conducting an investigation that was to be due on July 12. Upon further reflection after the meeting that we held this past Friday, members of the board had further questions, further concerns, and some thoughts were raised about whether a more independent party should be appointed, given the fact that the town manager was party to the events, if you will, as the public information officer and as the supervisor, ultimately, for the the DPW and the water department. So at this time, I'll open it up to the board for discussion about how we think we should proceed, and then we may take public comment thereafter, and also I will take a report from Mr. Rittenauer about the town's efforts thus far. Anyone?
Might I suggest, and I think that was well put because basically he's going to be the final party to this, I would like to put out on the table a suggestion that Sergeant DaCosta of the police department, who has the experience in gathering facts and data as needed, if he were assigned to work along with the legal expertise of our assistant town counsel, I think that might be beneficial to everybody all around, because then they could put something together to give to Mr. Rittenauer to make a positive and concrete decision as to where we're going, how it's going to be done, and so on.
Okay. Well, we have a suggestion. Thoughts, anyone?
Well, I don't know. I never thought of this as being a police issue. I understand that police are trained in investigation, but I don't know. I have to think about that. Last week, and I'm not speaking for David, but he mentioned that he thought that maybe we should ask town council to do the review. And I thought that we should ask the Board of Health to do it. And the reason I suggested the Board of Health is because they're very knowledgeable about the issues involved. They know what it means to have coliform in a water system. They know what it means to have E. coli in a water system. They're familiar with the processes that go on there. I knew that the Board of Health also had broad powers under the statutes, but in talking with town council, I'm reminded that those broad powers deal with their authorities to set rules and regulations for the town. And maybe as a result of this review, if you want to call it a review or an investigation, a review of the events, an investigation in terms of whether or not people need to be interviewed, or whether it's more of a factual gathering of information. I suppose people could be interviewed. The Board of Health clearly could do that. I'm still persuaded that because I think they have I think they have a certain level of reasonableness about the issues because they're very familiar with them, and they understand them, and they know the processes. And so I think I'm still inclined to want to consider the Board of Health as the agent for the town to do this.
I think that any investigation, any review that takes place, I do believe town council's office should be involved in it. But I want to make sure that we do not have so many people off on a tangent over here doing a review over here that we're just all, going out on limbs, just getting this information. Everything needs to be factual. Definitely, I think Frank Duffy's office should be involved in it. If there's a second party involved, let it be, as Ahmed suggested, Sergeant DaCosta or the Board of Health. That's, I guess, what we're going to decide. I think we should be in agreement that Frank's office should be involved in this. At least one of the people, the people who are involved in the review. So I guess the question here is, over and above Frank's office, who should we, assign to work with him? So that's the...
Well, I truly don't see it as a police issue at all. I mean, I just know there are investigative skills needed, but I don't really see it as a police issue. And what are we really looking for? What we're looking for is a timeline of the events, going back to when the first sample was taken, or the first samples were taken, to the very end, to when the ban was lifted, and all of those days in between. So we're talking, June 9th to June 21st, 22nd? What occurred during those days? What samples were taken? Where did they go? What were the readings? I mean, it's sort of a gathering of information rather than it is, I don't see it quite so much as an investigation as preparing a timeline of all of the information that was collected, how it was handled. Did it follow protocols? If it didn't follow the protocol and deviated from protocol, what was the reason for the deviation? And did the deviation accomplish what the purpose was in deviating, or something of that sort? That's what I see it as, is more of a collection of facts, and looking at the facts and determining whether or not, in this given situation, in terms of our water system, were the procedures followed and the information handled and disseminated to the appropriate parties. So that's how I look at it. I don't see it as, interviewing people and going into what I would think to be, what I would consider a true investigation. I know an investigation. I'm a trained investigator on sexual harassment. And so I know what it means to investigate. So anyway, I don't want to just belabor this, but that's my opinion.
It is worth noting that I did receive an email from Ms. Freitag. As we noted Monday, she had a family issue. She could not be here today. And she expressed some thoughts that the Board of Health might be an appropriate body to lead this. And I think as we look at this, obviously, a lot of parties are going to be involved no matter who leads it. Very clearly, the Board of Health will be involved because they have pieces of the puzzle in their regulatory authority. I think it's going to be obvious that Town Council will be involved just to make sure that we all have the advice that we need, whether it is this board or the individual or individuals that we appoint to lead this inquiry, I think is a good word to use, that they would have the necessary advice and counsel to accomplish the tasks at hand. And certainly, go ahead.
I was just going to say, hopefully we can draw some consensus on this.
Right.
And what I would submit, rather than us going round and round and round and spinning the wheels here, is that through Town Council's office, if Frank assigns Pat to do this, she can draw on the people that she wants and give them direction. I need you to do this, I need you to do this. They bring all the information to her or to Frank, they compile it and give it to Mr. Rittenauer. I think that would solve the problem. And it's not a police matter here. I'm not saying that somebody should go to jail for this, not by any means, no. What I'm looking for, and I agree with you, Pat, that we have to set up some kind of a timeline because somewhere along the line, something went astray. And like I've said in the past, being human, people make mistakes. Now, from this, I'm hoping that maybe we can get a continuity folder made up so that no matter what happens, you could bring somebody in within an hour, they could look through the manual and know exactly which way they're going to go because the continuity of events are all spelled out, where to go, what to look for, what has to be sent off to DEP, when all of that should be in a loose leaf folder. And I would suggest that that's probably something that they might even come up with after looking at this timeline. But something has got to be done for the sake of everybody. This is not finger pointing. As far as I'm concerned, absolutely not. This is something that I think should be done basically for all departments. There should be a continuity book. So that no matter what it is, no matter what department it is, if somebody drops dead, 2 seconds, somebody could pick up the book and keep the thing going. And I think that's what we have to look for. But I would strongly submit that through Town Council's office, that's where the direction comes from, and let them decide who they want to do what, when, where, and how.
I agree, it's not a police matter.
No, not at all.
And I think, obviously, having someone with the sergeant's experience in questioning, I think there's a methodical process there, as you probably could explain to all of us. I'm a little concerned about assigning a police officer as lead investigator or the lead in the inquiry, because I don't want the message sent that we're looking for criminal wrongdoing here.
Right.
And certainly, and I think it can't be stressed enough, because honestly, I was a little disappointed with the Enterprise talking about a witch hunt. And the reality is that if we don't do an inquiry, if we don't look into the causes and the reasons why this happened, there will be a witch hunt, because there's already finger pointing. There's already people out there who think that they know who did wrong and what happened. And the reality is until we've gone through the history of the events and we've learned from the situations, only then are we going to know exactly what happened. To sort of brush this aside, as the Enterprise suggested, and say that, let's move on and put it behind us, it leaves too many questions festering. I tend to agree with Ms. Freitag and Ms. Flynn that I think the Board of Health may be an appropriate body to lead this. And I think that way for a couple of reasons. One is that they are appointed by this board. As appointees of the Board of Selectmen, they report directly to us anyway. And so their first and only loyalty is to the Board of Selectmen and not to Mr. Rittenauer or any of his employees. And I think that's an important message to send in terms of an impartiality, if you will, that this board, there's two investigations here, and Mr. Rittenauer will explain what he and his people have been doing. He has a responsibility as supervisor of the employees, and I alluded to that earlier. Our responsibility is within the charter as ombudsman, and it's a much more broad, overarching responsibility with regards to the public at large, and not necessarily with the discipline or training or whatever needs to be done with regards to employees. And so I think having a more independent body conduct our side of the investigation or the inquiry, let me use that word, inquiry, I think it's more appropriate. And for that reason, I think the Board of Health is appropriate. And also, I agree that their expertise and their knowledge in this situation, I think, is more appropriate, perhaps, than some of the other suggestions that have been made, such as Sergeant DaCosta or Town Council. They do have an understanding of the health issues involved, and I think that they would be a better choice. Now, ultimately, we're going to have to, as a board, decide who we'd like to lead this inquiry, and that was exactly the purpose of this meeting, is to say, how are we going to conduct this? Those are my 2 cents. Any other thoughts?
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Alan.
The only reason I say that is because you're going to bounce against some legal aspects, and that's why I think that Town Council's office definitely should be a part of this.
Yes.
I don't have a problem if the Board of Health wants to go out there and do the inquiry and bring back a timeline and do the questioning of people involved and look at the equipment, et cetera, so on and so forth. I have no problem with that. It doesn't matter as far as that goes. What matters is to properly formulate it so that it's in the right path that we're going to be putting forth. And that's why I think Town Council's office needs to be on top of this.
Well, I would agree with that I think that the Board of Health would be the lead agency for all the reasons that you stated so well. But I think to have that communication and that connection always with Town Council would be an important thing to do, and I would think the Board of Health would do that. But I think that there should be a formal acknowledgement that the Board of Health does need to work with Town Council on issues that may have legal implications along the line. I would support that.
And if, Mr. Duffy, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you wouldn't mind addressing a question, the board under the charter has the authority to subpoena, to put individuals under oath. Now, my understanding is that we can appoint someone to adopt that authority, for lack of a better word, that we can transfer that authority to a hand-picked agent or agents. Am I correct?
Yes, under the charter, under section C3-5, the Board of Selectmen has the power to conduct investigations, and while it specifically says you may authorize the town manager to conduct these investigations, it's my opinion that that does not preclude you from authorizing others to do so.
Okay.
The board has the power to subpoena witnesses, administer oaths, take testimony, and seek the production of evidence. And when you charge someone with this responsibility, you should make sure that you're including all the powers that the charter enumerates for the board, and you can do that. Yeah, that's the answer, I think, to your question, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else have any further questions for Mr. Duffy while he's...
I might just have a couple of points, though. You've been mentioning the Board of Health, and I think you probably should hear from the chairman or the members of the Board of Health as to whether, how they think about this before you give them this assignment.
Sure.
But one of the things I would like to point out to you is the Board of Health is a board, and any time they do anything, they have to meet in the open meeting law. And I leave it to you folks to decide whether that's a constraint upon them that might impair an investigation. I don't know. That's your judgment. But in any event, under the charter, any investigation that you order must be filed with the town clerk's office, and it's a public document as soon as it's prepared. So whatever the result of this investigation is, it's going to become public immediately.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vieira, would you mind offering your 2 cents? seeing as we seem to be leaning in that direction before we make any final decisions here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is James Vieira, and I'm the chairman of the Falmouth Board of Health. In my Coast Guard days, we would have called something like this an incident report, and I think that that may be an appropriate term for what we may be embarking on. It would be my preference that the incident report be led by Mr. George Hoyfelder, a member of our Board of Health, and also the director of the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment. I think we all know George. We know that he is certainly capable of undertaking this. What you will get from a Board of Health report on this is an unbiased and uninfluenced incident report. In all likelihood, it would probably include an accurate timeline of the event and subsequent actions based on interviews and discussions. These interviews would include, but not be limited to, the DPW administration, water department staff, town manager and assistant town manager, the health agent, the town's contractual water consultant, DEP personnel at the Southeast Regional Office, and the staff at Groundwater Analytical, where the samples are analyzed. The timeline and subsequent analysis would, in all likelihood, include a review of all the relevant documents, including but not limited to the groundwater analytical sampling sheets leading up to, during, and after the event, correspondence between the DEP, DPW, and Water Department, including any email communication, and correspondence between any other town department that is considered relevant. During the course of this exercise, suggestions for the improvement of our town communications, procedures, and protocols may become apparent, and those would also be included in the report. Mr. Duffy brings up an excellent point about the new open meeting law that is going into effect next week, the changes, July 1st, which we have all, most of us anyway, have attended Mr. Duffy's seminar. And I think that it's very important that as we go forward, Mr. Duffy is able to advise us on how that we can conduct these things within the parameters of the open meeting law. Because I certainly think that these interviews and discussions would probably, obviously, be recorded, but they wouldn't necessarily occur during a normal Board of Health meeting. So I think there are some issues on the open meeting law that are unanticipated, at least by myself, that we need to clarify as to how we go about doing these interviews and putting this report together. So we need to tread a little lightly on that topic, and I think that most certainly need Frank's involvement in determining how that plays out. The other aspect of this is, of course, doing this in a timely fashion. We all know that we have 4th of July coming up. People are going to be on vacation, they'll be away. So it will, while it's expected that we would, proceed with all due diligence, it may take a little time just because of the season to put this together. So those are really my comments, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
First question I have is, acting as a board, you're going to have these so-called interviews in open session where the public is sitting right there with you, because they have to be posted meetings.
I wouldn't think so.
Well, that's exactly what we
Okay,
need
that's
Frank's
something-
opinion on.
All right.
And that discussion will be ongoing over the next few days, I'm sure, to determine how that section of this report, if you do have the Board of Health do it, will be accomplished.
Well, just in thinking about it, I would think that if you were to ask George Hoyfelder to be your lead person on this, he may ask someone else or two people to interview. Is there, what, a 5 on your board?
That's correct.
So 2 would not be a quorum. I don't know if that's, to have 2 people interview a particular individual would not be a violation of the open meeting law, I wouldn't think. But I'm not the attorney. But I think, as you say, those procedures could be worked out.
Absolutely.
And then at a certain point where the board needs to discuss whatever they need to discuss, then that would happen at the board level. But some of it would, as you say, would not occur at a board meeting.
That's correct.
We're not used to functioning that way, so we have to think a little differently.
In this, the open meeting law, these changes to the open meeting law for the Board of Health, and I'm sure for all other town boards, we're in a learning period here over the next few months, and we certainly expect to be chatting with Mr. Duffy often as issues such as this arise, and how do we incorporate the new law into how we do business.
Further thoughts from the board?
Well, I think
No, go ahead.
I think from hearing from Frank and from Jim is that it's possible. It could be worked out, is what I'm hearing. I don't see impediments to it working in that fashion, off the top of my head. I mean, you have to be very careful about how you proceed, but it doesn't appear that on the outline that you gave of the various aspects of what you would look at, that in doing any of that there would be any impediments to doing it as long as it was done within the open meeting law.
That was my reason of saying that, for example, if Frank's office were to call upon George as an expert in that thing to do a certain thing, then that would be George doing something for town council, completely outside of the open meeting because it's only the one person involved. Maybe that's something that could be looked in. So in other words, direction for George to do a particular thing would come from town council and not from the board, because then it has to be part of your minutes and everything else.
I understand, and I think the Board of Health is obviously prepared to participate at any level that the Board of Selectmen deems appropriate, and obviously with Frank's guidance.
Mr. Braga, do you have you have your 2 cents to add at all, or?
No, I feel that the path we are taking with Frank's office, with the Board of Health, I'm very comfortable with that.
Okay.
So I have no problem with that. My original concern was, I know Bob has undertaken a very thorough review of himself already. He's already interviewed people. I didn't want to have many people out doing their own thing, so to speak, where, we're getting nowhere. But I think, I feel very comfortable. I know George from the wastewater meetings. He's a stand-up guy. I know Frank since '77 when he taught me law in 4 Cs, and I think that's a good way to go with this. So,
Okay. All right, then. Perhaps then a motion that the board assign the Board of Health to be its agent for this, as was stated, incident report, and that they will work with Frank Duffy in order to conduct the various inquiries necessary to make it happen.
I'd make that,
I just wondered if we may, since you're at the motion point, it might take a couple minutes and write something up for consideration rather than try and go off the top of your head.
okay.
By all means. Okay, if you'd like to, and then in that case, we'll move on. Mr. Rittenauer, if you have some...
Yes, I do have some thoughts, and I think this can help put, some of the analysis in a context. I just want to say I certainly support the role of the Board of Selectmen in conducting an independent inquiry into this situation, and I also feel that the Board of Health is qualified to conduct that review in conjunction with Town Council, so I think that's going to be a very positive process. And in addition to that, I want to talk just a little bit about, in my role as the town manager under the charter, I will be conducting detailed administrative investigation of the facts surrounding all of these issues that we're discussing, and that is going to be very much required in order to conduct a full evaluation of the performance of our local government on this issue, and this includes taking the necessary follow-up actions that we need to do in making adjustments based on that. And I'm also very happy to coordinate, with Town Council and the Board of Health. I'm already working very closely with the Department of Public Works Director, Mr. Rajak, in developing some of the detailed information that we need to analyze these issues, such as the timeline and all of the various issues that are in there, and that we're moving ahead with this now, and I think that it will be a complementary process. And to Selectman Braga's concerns, I think I'm in a good position to work with everyone that's involved to ensure that we don't have kind of a disjointed process, but that we're working in a coordinated fashion to identify those types of information and the facts that we need to, make sure that we address the situation fully and that we coordinate that review. And so that will be ongoing as well, and so folks can, be confident that this is part of our process, that we'll be having a complete and full review.
While Mr. Duffy continues to draft our motion, would the public like to make any comments? Offer any suggestions? All right, well. Please identify yourself for the record.
My name is Dave Moriarty, resident of Falmouth, and I have a suggestion that you might take, you might not. In addition to what you're planning to carry out, could we have an independent review and perhaps someone, a private investigator, maybe something like that, to just so that the citizens of Falmouth can feel reassured that it was an independent body that investigated the incident, and this is what they came up with. It's not in-house, it's totally independent from the town of Falmouth, so the information we get from them, we can feel good about. And that's my only suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Caleb Rostron, 43 Two Ponds Road. I mirror the gentleman ahead of me, and my thought was that not necessarily a private investigator, but somebody from the county level, County Board of Health, so that it removes any taint of possibly an inside job or cover-up outside of your chain of command and outside of the management team's chain of command from the City of Falmouth. You said yourselves, you appoint the Board of Health. If they come up with recommendations, people might say, gee whiz, they cook the books because they're dependent upon appointment by the Board of Selectmen. I'm not saying that type of thing would happen, but having an independent overseer to the project, especially at a municipal or local government level like the county, Barnstable County, would remove that. And the second point I'd like to make, and this goes beyond what happened with this water incident, I was quite surprised that the EOC was never activated. And I would like to see the recommendations after the timeline is done, look to the future and say whether we have a neighborhood-sized event or a citywide event, we need to have recommendations for when an abbreviated EOC is set up, when it isn't set up, or when we push the button and start everybody downstairs so that information can get out to people, because I got more information out of the night manager at Shaw's store when I went there to get water than I did from within the town government. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
Taylor,
Mustafa?
just for your edification,
Yes, sir.
George is with the county.
Okay.
And believe me, George is going to tell you exactly like it is. He pulls no punches, he won't hide anything, he'll give it to you straight up, whether you like it or not. That's the way he
And I
is.
wasn't inferring that somebody was going to try and hide something, but it just removed that, especially if things went to litigation. where Mr. Duffy might be involved in kind of fending that off for the town of Falmouth.
Which I think is a good point, and one of the reasons perhaps why, I know I can't speak for the other members of the board, but for me personally, it's one of the reasons why I would like to see Mr. Duffy remain in an advisory role as opposed to a lead investigator, or a lead of the inquiry, if you will. His legal expertise is absolutely necessary, but you are correct. He also has an obligation to the town that having someone more independent would perhaps give people more confidence in the results of the inquiry.
Joe Contiani, Precinct 9. I think Mr. Duffy would be correct in that position, and I think one independent person working with him, whether we pay him as a contract, because now you're going to start getting into meetings, post them 2 days in advance. Some of these people have to work for a living that volunteer their time on the board, so they're taking time off from work. Now you have to bring people that are in town employment, bring them in at night. Is that going to cost us overtime to bring them in? So I think maybe the gentleman, I can't remember his name,
Mr.
would be
Vieira.
the person that we could turn around and contract to do the job and work with our town council. This eliminates the board, which does a great job. I'm not knocking the board at all, believe me. But it will save notification, 2 days advance notice, getting the board members there. Town council and one individual, they run the show. All the ins and outs we have to jump through the hoops to get won't be there anymore. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Duffy, do you have a potential motion for us? I'll be happy to take it. Maybe I should have asked you to read it. Let me just make sure. If I stumble here, it's because I'm not used to Mr. Duffy's handwriting. I mean no offense. Let's see. So the motion would be that the Board of Health vote to that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize the Board of Health to supervise an investigation of the DEP boil water matter, and that the Board of Health may appoint or designate any person, including town employees, to interview witnesses and gather information and prepare reports, and further, that the Board of Health and its agents shall have the power of investigation enumerated in Section C53, yep, thank you, of the Falmouth Home Rule Charter. So that would be the motion.
I'll second that.
All right then. Comments, discussion on the motion?
I think it's a good motion.
All right, then. We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Mr. Vieira, you folks have a task to fulfill. You meet Monday? Oh, yeah, please, I'm sorry.
We met this previous Monday, and as tonight is Thursday, we cannot meet on Monday because we would have had to post it this afternoon for a Monday meeting.
Okay.
And then, as you know, the following Monday is 4th of July.
Yes.
So our next scheduled meeting is July 12th, but I expect that, obviously, this process is not going to wait until July 12th to begin, so we will do what we need to do in conjunction with Frank to get this started and do whatever we need to do to make it happen.
Okay. Would it be appropriate to ask that the Board of Health report back to the Board of Selectmen on July 12th? Do you think by then you folks will have begun a
Certainly.
process that you could give us an update?
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. I think, as we discussed this past Friday, that there were some concerns about holding people's feet to the fire in terms of a timeline. On the one hand, we want a defined end to this process. We don't want it to go on and on ad nauseum. But on the other hand, we also don't want to rush the process. So we can start with an update on the 12th, and then get a feel for how much longer it may take you folks to conclude the inquiry?
I'd be happy to provide progress reports
Okay.
at any time.
All right. Very good, then. And then the public can hold our feet to the fire, knowing that we will have an update on the 12th for you at the very latest, and perhaps we might even have something further to report on Monday or at some point between those two dates. So, I believe we've covered all our bases and all of the business we intended to today. Then I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. This meeting is adjourned.
Public hearing.
Cavosa Excavating is a family-owned and operated company specializing in the installation of Title V septic systems. Cavosa Excavating is one of the largest septic system installers on Cape Cod. Whether it's upgrading your current system or installing a whole new system, Cavosa Excavating can do the job. Cavosa Excavating, 508-563-5530.
KK Cotters, known for its seafood, fried clams, handmade onion rings, along with Angus cuts meats, prime rib, ribeye, and sirloin. A varied selection of wine and over 50 types of beer. Open daily till 9 p.m. at 100 Davis Straits in Falmouth.